Before there was Unai Emery's Aston Villa, who were well-deserved Champions League quarter-finalists this season and who are a team loaded with promise, there was Aston Villa in the 90s, a proper club with proper players, no nonsense, no frills, just a squad that knew how to win. In 1994, Aston Villa pulled off something special. At a time when Manchester United was starting to look invincible, Villa said not today, and they said it with a swagger only Ron Atkinson could manage. Villa put 3 past United, with a brace from Dean Saunders following a goal by mercurial talent, Daly and Atkinson. This is the story of the 1994 League Cup winning side. A team packed with big personalities, underrated legends, and some of the most glorious moustaches English football has ever seen. Welcome back to Retro Football Club. Today, we're rewinding the tape and reliving Villa's night of glory at Wembley. Stick around as we ask, where are they now? It's easy to forget just how good Mark Bosnich was in his prime. Long before the headlines, controversy, and chaos, he was one of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League. And in 1994, he was a huge part of Villa's League Cup triumph. Still only 22 at the time, Bosnich had recently established himself as Villa's #1 and had a reputation for being fearless, athletic, and occasionally eccentric. In the final against Manchester United, he put in a shift in the 3-1 victory, making a string of saves. Not bad for a lad who had already once been at United as a teenager. After helping Villa lift the League Cup, Bosnich remained a key figure at the club throughout the 90s, often producing solid performances, including a famous penalty save hat-trick against Spurs. He was part of another League Cup win in 1996, cementing his status as a Villa cult hero. His final total for Villa was 228 appearances over 8 seasons. In 1999, Bosnich moved back to Manchester United to replace Peter Schmeichel, but it didn't quite work out. Fitness issues, poor performances and clashes with Sir Alex Ferguson saw his second spell at Old Trafford collapse. And he was swiftly replaced by Fabian Barthez as #1 keeper after just 1 season. A move to Chelsea followed, albeit as a backup keeper, but off-field problems, including a well-publicised battle with drug addiction, ultimately derailed his career, and by the time he left in 2003, he was as low down as the 4th-choice keeper. Bosnich later admitted to a heavy cocaine addiction during his time out of football, which saw him banned and effectively retired by his late 20s. But to his credit, he made a brief comeback in Australia with the Central Coast Mariners and Sydney FC. Now, Bosnich has found peace back home in Australia. He has worked as a pundit, predominantly for Fox Sports, and has cleaned up, stayed out of trouble, and still talks passionately about his playing days. For Villa fans, he'll always be remembered not for the off-field drama, but as the acrobatic sharp-tongued Aussie between the sticks during one of the club's last great eras. Steady, reliable, and criminally underrated, Earl Barrett was a no-fuss, solid right-back with a proper engine. In the '94 League Cup final, he put in a typically no-nonsense shift, helping to shut down a dangerous United attack to help secure victory at Wembley. Barrett joined Villa from Oldham in 1992 for a then club record £1.7 million, and he quickly became a fan favourite. Nicknamed the Pearl by some supporters, he brought consistency to the back line during one of Villa's best spells in the Premier League era. His form didn't go unnoticed, and he even picked up a few England caps in the mid-90s. But with Gary Charles later joining the Villa backline, Barrett would be moved on to Everton in 1995. He departed Villa having made 104 league appearances, scoring once. At Everton, he played a part in keeping them in the Premier League, but injuries started to catch up with him, especially a persistent knee problem that would ultimately cut his career short. After a short spell with Sheffield United, he had an injury hit 24 months with Sheffield Wednesday, where the club would be relegated from the top flight, with Barrett subsequently deciding to hang his boots up. Following retirement, Barrett was behind part of a consortium attempting to buy Port Vale, but after that failed, he turned to coaching and was employed as a youth team coach at both Stoke City and Oldham Athletic. Barrett now lives in Houston, Texas, and is the director of the Rise Soccer Academy. Some players were born to play football. Paul McGrath was born to defend. In 1994, even at 34 years old with knees held together by sheer willpower and magic spray, McGrath was still the calmest man on the pitch at Wembley. Up against Manchester United's strike force, he put in one of those classic performances, elegant, intelligent, unflustered. The man read the game like he wrote it. Nicknamed God by the Villa faithful, and you'll find few who argue, McGrath joined Villa in 1989 after leaving Manchester United under a cloud. Many thought his career was finished due to injury and off-field issues, but under Graeme Taylor and later Ron Atkinson, he was reborn. At Villa Park, McGrath didn't just defend, he dominated. No shouting, no sliding tackles unless absolutely necessary. He was football's version of a Jedi, always in the right place, always one step ahead. He won the PFA Players' Player of the Year in 1993, a rare feat for a defender, and even rarer for one playing outside the so-called elite clubs. The League Cup final was a personal redemption arc, McGrath shutting down his former club, lifting silverware at Wembley, and proving once again that class is permanent. He stayed with Villa until 1996, having played 253 times in the league, scoring 9 goals. He remained in the Premier League for a further season with Derby County, before retiring with Sheffield United in 1998. Off the pitch, he went on to have a brief spell with Waterford United as director of football, but has largely stayed out of the footballing spotlight. McGrath's battles with alcoholism were no secret, and he's spoken about them candidly in his autobiography, Back from the Brink, which many consider one of the best and most brutally honest football books ever written. One thing is for sure, he will always be a Villa legend. If Paul McGrath was the calm and composed general at the back, Shaun Teal was the bodyguard, the hard man, the one who made sure opposition strikers felt every single challenge. In the final, Teal was immense, throwing himself into blocks, headers and tackles like it was a street fight. And in many ways, that's how he played, raw, physical and totally fearless. Teal joined Villa from Bournemouth in 1991 for a modest fee, and by 1994, he'd formed one of the most iconic centre-back partnerships in Villa's recent history alongside McGrath. They were the perfect odd couple, one all elegance, the other pure aggression, and together, they were as good as anyone in England at the time. Despite not being the flashiest name in that Villa squad, Teal was absolutely vital. After helping Villa lift the cup, it was the beginning of the end of his time at the club, as he would lose his place in the team to an up-and-coming Ugo Ehiogu. All in all, Teal played 142 times in the league, scoring 2 goals before moving on to Tranmere Rovers in 1995. From there, he had a bit of a journeyman spell, brief stints at Preston North End, a spell in Hong Kong with Happy Valley, before returning to the UK with Motherwell, Carlisle United and Southport. In 2002, he became player-manager of non-league side Burscough, guiding them to victory in the 2003 FA Trophy, where he played the full 90 minutes. He later joined Northwich Victoria, again as a player-manager before taking on his first full-time managerial role at Chorley between 2005 and 2006. Since leaving football, Teal has worked as a pub and restaurant landlord and resides in Lancashire. Irish international Steve Storton wasn't just a fullback, he was Villa's secret weapon. In the final, he gave the kind of performance that reminded everyone why Liverpool had once fought to keep him. Solid defensively, dangerous going forward, and with a left foot that could whip across into a phone box. He first arrived in 1991 after falling down the pecking order at Liverpool, and quickly became a key figure under Ron Atkinson. At Villa Park, he had more freedom to bomb forward, and his pinpoint delivery became a vital part of the attack. He wasn't flashy, but he was consistent, composed, and always good for a crunching tackle followed by a clean pass. He stayed at Villa until 1998, adding another League Cup in 1996, and upon his departure he had played 208 times in the league, scoring an impressive 16 goals. He would return to Liverpool for a further 2 seasons on Merseyside, but in December 2000, he was re-signed by John Gregory at Villa, going on to make another 73 appearances over the next 3 years. He later had spells with fellow Midlands sides Coventry City and Walsall, wrapping up his playing days in 2005. Like backline teammate Paul McGrath, Storton was a stalwart for the Republic of Ireland, earning many caps and playing in several tournaments. After retiring, Storton stepped into management, most notably as Ireland boss from 2006 to 2007. He also had a spell as assistant manager to Gary McAllister at Leeds United, before an ill-fated spell as Darlington manager, where he won just 4 of 23 games in charge before being dismissed shortly before the club were relegated from the Football League in 2010. In more recent times, he's worked as a scout for Middlesbrough and Sunderland, but these days Storton keeps a lower profile, although does appear as an after-dinner speaker. In a team with flair players, big personalities and the odd madman, Kevin Richardson was the grown-up in the room. The steady head, the midfield metronome. In the final, while others grabbed headlines, Richardson did what he always did, kept it neat, tidy, and utterly professional. He wasn't the flashiest player on the pitch, but that's exactly why he was so important. As Villa's captain, he led by example. No screaming, no fist-pumping, just calm authority. In that final up against Manchester United's midfield of Vincent Keane, Richardson never looked flustered. He broke up play, used the ball well, and let the likes of Townsend and Atkinson do the running. His career before Villa was already decorated, title winner with Everton in the mid-80s, a league medal with Arsenal in '89, and European nights with Real Sociedad. When he joined Villa in 1991, he brought with him a winning mentality, and Ron Atkinson quickly handed him the armband. It proved to be a masterstroke. Under Richardson's captaincy, Villa came close to winning the inaugural Premier League title in 1992-93, and then went one better by lifting silverware at Wembley the following season. He left Villa Park at the end of the following season, after totalling 141 appearances with 13 goals. He did remain in the Premier League for a further 3 seasons with both Coventry City and Southampton, although by the time his season on the South Coast came round, he was evidently past his prime. He spent his final 2 years in professional football with both Barnsley and Blackpool, before retiring in 2000. Post-retirement, Richardson moved into coaching, including spells as youth team manager at Sunderland, before becoming Carlton Palmer's assistant at Stockport County. He returned to Sunderland and became part of the first-team coaching staff before being removed by his rival of the Cup final, Roy Keane. He went on to work for Darlington as Steve Staunton's assistant and was a youth team coach for Newcastle United up until 2022, eventually leaving to spend more time with his family. When you think of 90s midfielders who were criminally underrated and yet combined grit, graft, and a touch of class, Andy Townsend is right up there. In the cup final, he was everywhere. Pressing, tackling, passing, leading. A proper box-to-box engine who gave Manchester United no room to breathe. Townsend had only joined Villa the year before from Chelsea, but he slotted into Ron Atkinson's side like he'd been there for years. He brought bite and energy to the midfield, the kind of player you want with you in a battle, especially at the Twin Towers of Wembley. In that final, it was Townsend who set the tone. He outworked United's midfield, kept things simple in possession, and helped Villa take control of the tempo. No headlines, no highlight reel moments, just a top professional doing exactly what was needed. Internationally, Townsend was a key figure for the Republic of Ireland, part of the golden era under Jack Charlton, playing in both the 1990 and 1994 World Cups. He captained his country, earned over 70 caps, and became one of the most respected voices in Irish football. He would leave Villa in 1997, having scored 8 goals in 134 league appearances, before moving on to Middlesbrough and later West Bromwich Albion, before hanging up his boots in 2000. Following retirement, Townsend became a familiar voice in football broadcasting, providing co-commentary for ITV throughout the 2000s and 2010s. His tactics truck on the Premiership may have become a bit of a meme, but behind the scenes, he was always admired for his insight, clarity, and calm analysis. In recent years, he has become less common on TV, although he has worked for BT. The bulk of his appearances are now on radio station TalkSport. Back in the days when wingers stayed wide, took on their man, and made the crowd lean forward every time they got the ball, Tony Daly was pure electricity. Daly was one of the most exciting players to watch in English football during the early 90s. Blistering pace, tight control, and a low centre of gravity that made fullbacks look silly. He was Villa through and through, having come up through the youth ranks and broken into the first team in the mid-80s. By the time 1994 rolled around, injuries had already begun to take their toll, but when fit, Daly could still turn a game. He played a key part earlier in the League Cup campaign, and had long been one of Ron Atkinson's most trusted attacking outlets. Whether hugging the touchline or cutting inside, he brought a spark that made Villa a threat every time they broke forward. He left Villa later that year, having played 233 times in the league, scoring 31 goals going on to join Wolverhampton Wanderers, but those same injuries followed him. His time at Wolves, and later spells at Watford, Walsall and Forest Green Rovers, never quite hit the heights of his Villa days. After hanging up his boots, Daly didn't disappear, he reinvented himself. He became a fitness coach working with Wolverhampton Wanderers and Sheffield United. He now works as a personal trainer. There are goals, and then there are moments, and Dian Atkinson delivered moments, the kind that stick in your memory long after the final whistle. In Aston Villa's 1994 League Cup winning side, he was the X factor, unpredictable, powerful, and utterly brilliant on his day. Atkinson scored the opening goal in the final against Manchester United, calmly slotting past Les Sealey to give Villa the lead, but his impact on that cup run went far beyond that. He was the kind of player who could do something outrageous out of nowhere. Just ask Wimbledon, who were on the receiving end of that iconic solo goal that won goal of the season in 1992-93. Signed from Real Sociedad in 1991, Atkinson became a cult hero almost immediately. He had a unique blend of strength, speed, and imagination. His partnership with Dean Saunders up front was electric, one of the most entertaining in the early Premier League era. But like many mercurial talents, consistency was a challenge. After the 1994 triumph, Atkinson's time at Villa began to wind down, leaving in '95 after 25 goals in 85 appearances. He moved to Turkey with Fenerbahce, where he initially played well. However, in his second season he spent time on loan with French club Metz, and then a short spell back in England with Manchester City. Atkinson later played in Saudi Arabia with Al Ittihad, and in South Korea with Daejeon Hana Citizen and Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors. Retiring in 2001, he worked as a football agent and formed a sports consultancy called Players Come First. Tragically, Atkinson's story doesn't have a happy ending. In 2016, after recently suffering with heart and kidney issues, he died after being tasered by police outside his father's home, following a manic episode. It was a deeply upsetting incident that led to a landmark conviction of a police officer for manslaughter. His death rocked the football world and sparked conversations about mental health, policing, and the vulnerability of former players after the spotlight fades. For Villa fans, Dian Atkinson will always be remembered for the joy he brought, the goals, the charisma, the unpredictability. He didn't just play football, he entertained. In a squad packed with seasoned pros and international stars, Graeme Fenton was the fresh-faced academy product, living the dream. Just 20 years old at the time of the League Cup final, Fenton started the match in the absence of Dwight Yorke. Fenton had been tipped for big things. A technically tidy player capable of playing as an attacking midfielder and as a striker, he had an eye for a pass and a cool head under pressure. He'd made his breakthrough under Ron Atkinson and looked set to become a regular fixture in the Villa engine room. But like many promising youngsters, breaking into a top-level side full of established internationals wasn't easy. Fenton made only 30 league appearances for Villa, scoring 3 goals and never nailed down a starting place. He eventually moved to Blackburn Rovers in 1995, and bizarrely, that's where he played an unexpected but iconic role in Premier League folklore. In April 1996, with Blackburn out of the title race but still fighting, Fenton scored twice against his boyhood club Newcastle United in a shock 2-1 win. Those goals effectively derailed Kevin Keegan's title charge and helped hand the Premier League crown to Manchester United. That night alone sealed Fenton's place in English football trivia history. He remained a Premier League player with Leicester City until 2000, before going on to play for Walsall, Stoke City, St Mirren, Blackpool, Darlington and Blyth Spartans. He later had a spell as player-manager of non-league side North Shields, leading them to victory at Wembley in the 2015 FA Vase. He went on to manage South Shields and Blyth Spartans, last in post in 2023. Fenton resides in the North East and is a football coach at Monks Eton High School. Big occasions need big players, and in the final, Dean Saunders delivered. After setting up Atkinson's opener, he went on to hit a brace, the first coming from a Kevin Richardson free kick, Saunders sticking out his leg to give Villa a 2-0 lead. He then went on to dispatch a late penalty to secure the trophy. Saunders had joined Villa in 1992 for a then club record £2.5 million from Liverpool, and it turned out to be money well spent. He formed a lethal partnership with Dian Atkinson, mixing pace, clever movement, and a poacher's instinct. Between them, they gave Villa a cutting edge up front that made them genuine contenders in the early Premier League years. In that '94 final, Saunders was a constant nuisance, always on the move, always sniffing out chances. And when the opportunity came, he didn't blink, a composed finish that put the result beyond doubt. Classic Dino. He stayed at Villa until 1995, leaving after scoring 37 goals in 112 games, before moving on to Turkey with Galatasaray. Playing under Graeme Souness, he famously helped them win the Turkish Cup, ironically playing against Dian Atkinson, who was playing for Fenerbahce, with both strike partners joining the bitter Istanbul rivals during the same summer. From there, he had stints at Nottingham Forest, Sheffield United, and Benfica, before retiring in 2001 as part of the Bradford City side, relegated from the Premier League. Internationally, Saunders was a key figure for Wales throughout the 90s, one of the few shining lights during a tough era for the national team. He racked up 75 caps and scored 22 goals, placing him among their all-time top scorers. After hanging up his boots, he moved into management and coaching. He initially was part of Graeme Souness's staff at Blackburn Rovers and Newcastle United. He went on to manage Wrexham and Doncaster Rovers, which led to a short failed spell in charge of Wolverhampton Wanderers. He then had a brief, chaotic stint at Crawley Town, and was last in a post at Chesterfield in 2015. In more recent times, Saunders was jailed for 10 weeks in 2019, for refusing to provide a roadside breath test. This was reduced to 1 day on appeal. He now works as a prominent radio host on radio station TalkSport. Moving on to the substitutes. Nigel Spink was the wise old head on the bench, and what a career he'd already had. By 1994, Spink had been at Aston Villa for 18 years. He was the link between the club's past European glory and their 90s resurgence. He didn't feature in the final itself, Bosnic took the gloves that day, but make no mistake, Spink's role in that squad was huge. As Villa's long-serving keeper, he was the experienced figure behind the scenes, mentoring the likes of Bosnic and Michael Oakes, keeping standards high in training. It's no exaggeration to say his presence helped shape the Villa dressing room of that era. Of course, Spink will always be most famous for that night in Rotterdam. Thrown in as a virtual unknown in the '82 European Cup final after Jimmy Rimmer went off injured, Spink pulled off a series of stunning saves to help Villa beat Bayern Munich and win the biggest prize in club football. From that point on, he became a Villa legend, and kept the #1 shirt for well over a decade. By the time of the League Cup win, Spink was winding down his playing days, but remained a valuable squad member. He left the club in 1996, after 2 decades of service, racking up over 450 appearances in all competitions. After Villa, he had spells with West Bromwich Albion, Millwall and Forest Green Rovers, retiring in 2001, after a 25-year career. Following retirement, he remained with Forest Green as their goalkeeping coach, and later took on similar roles working at Birmingham City, Wigan Athletic and Sunderland, under Steve Bruce. He left football in 2013 whilst with Bristol City. Spink now co-owns a Midlands-based van courier service called S&M Couriers. In a squad full of seasoned pros and big characters, Neil Cox was the dependable young lad at the back, ready to step in anywhere across the back line, which he did by replacing Steve Storton in the 79th minute. Signed from Scunthorpe United in 1991, Cox quickly adapted to life at the top level. He was versatile, athletic, and had a good footballing brain, qualities that made him a handy asset in Villa's squad as they challenged on multiple fronts in the early 90s. Right back was his natural position, but he could fill in wherever needed across the defence. He moved on in 1994, after playing 40 times, scoring 3 goals, and joining Middlesbrough for £1 million, becoming Brian Robson's first signing at the club. At Borough, he played a key role in their rise and promotion to the Premier League in his first season. He stayed at the Riverside until 1997, but would continue to play pockets of top-flight football over the next 8 years with both Bolton Wanderers and Watford. He later had spells with Cardiff City and Crewe Alexandra, before retiring with Leek Town in 2011, whilst working as their player manager. Over the best part of the next decade, Cox worked as assistant manager to Neil Ardley at AFC Wimbledon and Notts County. In 2020, he became manager of hometown club Scunthorpe United, but was later sacked a number of months before their relegation from the Football League. He is currently unemployed, after last working as Ardley's assistant once again at York City. Ray Houghton was one of those players who always seemed to be involved when trophies were being handed out, and in 1994, he added another to his impressive collection with Aston Villa. In the League Cup final against Manchester United, the former Liverpool man was an unused substitute. By the time he joined Villa in 1992, Houghton was in the veteran stage of his career, but he didn't play like it. He slotted into Ron Atkinson's midfield like he'd always been there, calm under pressure, clever on the ball, and still more than capable of making a late run into the box. He was a key figure during Villa's impressive inaugural Premier League campaign, and remained a steady presence in the build-up to that '94 Cup run. He left Villa in 1995, after 6 goals in 95 league appearances. He then moved on to Crystal Palace, before a spell with Reading, and then eventually hanging up his boots with non-league Stevenage Borough in 2000. Internationally, he's forever etched into Irish sporting folklore thanks to that goal against England at Euro '88, and another famous strike against Italy at USA '94. Post-retirement, Houghton became a familiar face and voice in the media, providing punditry across Irish and British TV, including RTE and TalkSport. He also worked in various ambassador and advisory roles, including with the Republic of Ireland national team. If ever there was a manager who embodied the spirit of early 90s football, it was Ron Atkinson. Big personality, big overcoats, bigger cigars, and underneath all that flash, a genuinely sharp football mind. In 1994, Big Ron masterminded one of Aston Villa's most satisfying wins of the modern era, outsmarting Manchester United in a cup final no less. By that point, Atkinson was already a household name. He'd managed the likes of Atletico Madrid, Manchester United and Sheffield Wednesday, and had a knack for building stylish, attacking teams that played with swagger. At Villa, he took over in 1991 and quickly brought belief back to the club. He led them to a second-place finish in the inaugural Premier League season, no small feat when everyone expected United to run away with it. But the cherry on top came at Wembley, up against Alex Ferguson, a man who took his job at United and was in the early stages of making them a juggernaut. Atkinson set his team up perfectly. Villa were organised, aggressive and confident. They defended brilliantly, took their chances and walked away 3-1 winners. It was classic Big Ron. Bold, unfazed by reputations, and always with a twinkle in his eye. He left Villa later that year, but not before delivering the first of their 2 League Cups in 2 years, an achievement that remains a high point in modern Villa history. After Villa, he had short spells at Coventry City, a return to Sheffield Wednesday, and a spell with Nottingham Forest, but his managerial magic was fading by then. He eventually moved into punditry, becoming one of the most recognizable voices on TV, with his colorful phrases, memorable gaffes, and undeniable charisma. His later years were sadly overshadowed by a racism controversy in 2004 that ended his broadcasting career, tarnishing his public image. Attempts were made to bring him to Swindon Town as a consultant in order to create a football reality TV show, although the actual show saw him feature at Peterborough United. In 2007, he briefly returned to football as Director of Football at Kettering Town, but in more recent years he has floated around the fringes of reality TV, even appearing on Celebrity Big Brother. Lately, Atkinson continues as a pundit, however his appearances are fairly limited to Manchester United television. Say what you like about Big Ron, but when it came to winning big games he usually had a plan, and in '94, it worked to perfection. And for whatever has gone on since, he will always be remembered for delivering Villa the goods on that day at Wembley. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for like-minded retro football content. We've been Retro Football Club. Thanks, goodbye and see you next time.